a lot of young women dream of being featured. For me to be given this opportunity is incredibly exciting.
The photograph shouldn't have mattered this much. At least, not on paper. One image, one magazine cover, one 20-year-old tennis player standing beneath the warm light of Madrid, wearing an oversized polo Ralph Lauren denim shirt and a raffia hat. Confident, almost effortless. But hidden inside that photograph was a decision that would eventually leave the tennis world asking a very uncomfortable question. What if someone saw Alex Eala coming long before the rest of us did? Because when that image appeared on the digital cover of Town and Country, it made almost no sense. Not to tennis insiders, not to magazine traditionalists, and certainly not to anyone who believed success had to arrive before recognition. This was a publication built on nearly 2 centuries of prestige. A magazine founded in 1846. A publication that had spent generations documenting royalty, wealth, influence, culture, and power. For 180 years, its covers introduced readers to people who had already arrived. Yet suddenly, standing where duchesses, socialites, icons, and established celebrities had stood before, was a young Filipina tennis player who hadn't won a WA title, hadn't reached a Grand Slam quarterfinal, hadn't cracked the elite ranks of women's tennis. And that is where this story begins. Not with a trophy, not with a championship celebration, but with a risk. Because what Town and Country did in August of 2025 wasn't simply feature Alex Eala. They made a prediction. And predictions are dangerous. Especially public ones. Magazines hate being wrong. Covers are expensive, time-consuming, permanent. Once they're published, there is nowhere to hide. If the person on the cover disappears, the publication looks foolish. If the promise never materializes, the image becomes a reminder of misplaced faith. That's why most lifestyle magazines follow a simple rule. Wait until greatness is undeniable. Wait until the trophy is in the player's hands. Wait until the headlines have already been written. Then celebrate them. That's how it worked for so many stars before her. The covers came after the breakthrough, after the slam finals, after the championships, after the world had already agreed. But Alex Eala's story was different. Her cover came first. And that single decision raises a fascinating possibility. Maybe the people behind that cover weren't documenting stardom. Maybe they were helping create it. At the time, Alex was known inside tennis circles. People recognized the talented young player from the Philippines who had developed her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy. Coaches talked about her potential. Scouts noticed her discipline. Dedicated fans followed her progress. But outside tennis, she was still largely unknown. The average Town and Country reader wasn't searching for Alex Eala articles. They weren't demanding a tennis cover. Yet somehow, someone inside that editorial room looked at her and saw something worth betting on. What makes this even more remarkable is that the publication understood exactly what it was doing. This wasn't a random profile buried deep inside the magazine. It wasn't a small feature tucked between luxury fashion pieces. It was a statement, the magazine's very first tennis digital cover. A first, the kind of decision that signals a shift in thinking. The kind of decision that tells readers a new story is beginning. And behind that story stood deputy digital editor Emily Burek, who openly described the feature as a dream project and celebrated it as the publication's first venture into this space. That detail matters because it reveals something important. Inside the building, they knew this wasn't ordinary. They knew they were opening a door. But what nobody could know at that moment was whether Alex Eala would walk through it. Because potential is one of the most dangerous words in sports. Every year, hundreds of athletes are labeled future stars. Every year, most of them disappear. Injuries happen. Confidence vanishes. Expectations become unbearable. Careers stall. Potential is exciting because it points toward the future. It's terrifying because the future never arrives exactly as planned. And for months after that cover appeared, the question lingered. Had the magazine moved too fast? Had they mistaken promise for achievement? Had they crowned someone before the results existed? Then the answers slowly started arriving. Not all at once. Not in one magical tournament. Not in a single headline. Instead, piece by piece, Alex began constructing the evidence herself. The first signs emerged on one of tennis's biggest stages. Indian Wells. A tournament that attracts the world's attention. A tournament where reputations can change overnight. When Alex Eala fought her way into the round of 16, she didn't simply win matches. She made history. She became the first Filipina ever to reach that stage at the event. Suddenly, people who had ignored the town and country cover months earlier were seeing her name again. This time attached to results. This time attached to achievements. And something interesting happened next. The magazine didn't move on. They came back. That may sound small, but it wasn't. Publications often spotlight rising stars and then quietly forget about them. Town and country didn't. They followed the story. They invested further. They acted like people protecting a prediction they still believed in. And every new result made their confidence look less like optimism and more like insight. Yet the real turning point was still coming. Because careers aren't transformed by potential. They're transformed by proof. And proof arrived on a grass court. As the 2026 season unfolded, Alex continued building momentum. Match by match. Round by round. Her confidence grew. Her ranking climbed. Her presence on tour became harder to ignore. But even then, there remained one thing critics could point to. No title. Until Birmingham. What happened there changed the entire conversation. Not because she dominated from start to finish. Not because the road was easy. In fact, the opposite was true. When the final began, things immediately went wrong. She lost the opening set. Momentum belonged to her opponent. Pressure intensified. The opportunity that had taken years to reach suddenly looked as if it might slip away. For many young players, that's where the story ends. For Alex Eala, it became the beginning. Something shifted. The nerves settled. The fight emerged. Point by point, game by game, she clawed her way back into the match. The crowd could feel it. Her team could feel it. And eventually, her opponent felt it too. The momentum changed hands. The comeback gathered force. And when the final point arrived, Alex Eala stood as a WTA champion for the very first time. The trophy mattered. The ranking jump mattered. The history mattered. But something else happened in that moment that few people noticed. Back in an archive somewhere, that magazine cover from 10 months earlier suddenly looked completely different. Because now it wasn't introducing a possibility. It was documenting a reality. And for the first time, the gamble looked brilliant. What had once appeared premature now felt prophetic. What had once looked risky now looked visionary. And the most surprising part was still ahead. Because hidden inside that original cover story was a sentence that would become far more powerful than anyone realized at the time. A sentence that would eventually transform an ordinary magazine interview into something that felt almost like a promise. That sentence was simple, almost understated. When Alex Eala spoke to Town and Country during that 2025 cover story, she said, "The only thing I can give back to my country is to inspire." At the time, it sounded like the kind of answer ambitious young athletes often give. Honest, hopeful, forward-looking, but still theoretical. She hadn't yet reached the milestones people usually point to as proof of inspiration. She was speaking about a future she hoped to create. What nobody realized then was how quickly that future would begin arriving. Because when you read those words today, after Indian Wells, after Eastbourne, after Birmingham, they land differently. The sentence hasn't changed. Alex hasn't changed. But the evidence surrounding those words has. Suddenly, millions of Filipino fans weren't imagining what inspiration could look like. They were watching it happen in real time. Every tournament brought new attention. Every victory brought new believers. Every ranking jump expanded her reach. The promise embedded inside that interview was slowly becoming reality. But this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because real careers are never as clean as magazine covers. Just days after the biggest triumph of her professional life, Alex walked onto the court at Queen's Club carrying enormous momentum. She had won 6 consecutive matches on grass. She was fresh off the first WTA title of her career. Confidence appeared to be surging. The narrative seemed obvious. Another deep run. Another breakthrough. Another chapter in the rise of tennis's newest star. Instead, something completely different happened. She lost. Quickly. Unexpectedly. The winning streak ended. The momentum stopped. The celebration faded. And suddenly everyone was reminded of a truth that sports never lets you forget. Success does not grant immunity. One great week cannot protect you from a difficult afternoon. And strangely enough, that loss may have strengthened the larger story. Because it exposed something important. The magazine cover was never a coronation. It was never declaring that Alex Eala had already arrived. It was introducing someone whose journey was still unfolding. There is a massive difference between those two things. One celebrates the end of a climb. The other recognizes the beginning of one. That distinction explains why this story matters far beyond tennis. For decades, lifestyle media has largely operated the same way. Achievement comes first. Recognition follows. The trophy arrives. Then the profile appears. The championship is won. Then the magazine cover gets scheduled. Society magazines traditionally function as victory laps. But Alex Eala's cover challenged that formula. Instead of rewarding established fame, it identified emerging significance. Instead of documenting stardom, it anticipated it. And that requires a different kind of vision. What's remarkable is that the people inside tennis seemed to see the same thing. Long before the rankings reflected it. Long before the trophy cabinet expanded. Long before casual fans recognized her name. Those closest to the sport were already talking. One of the strongest examples came from Wimbledon champion Barbara Krejcikova. After facing Alex, she described what she saw in direct terms. Power, precision, fearlessness. More importantly, she openly suggested that Alex belonged to the next generation of players capable of making a major impact. Think about that for a moment. A Grand Slam champion and a major American publication arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion from completely different directions. One evaluated her through matches. The other evaluated her through influence. Yet both saw the same thing: potential becoming inevitability. And then there is another layer to this story that often gets overlooked: the cultural impact. Because while tennis fans focused on rankings and tournament results, something bigger was happening beyond the court. For many Filipinos, the town and country cover represented something statistics could never fully capture: visibility, representation, recognition. The image traveled far beyond tennis communities. It reached families, students, young athletes, people who had never watched a WTA match. It became evidence that someone from their corner of the world could occupy spaces traditionally reserved for entirely different circles. That is why the reaction was so powerful. Thousands upon thousands responded online. Messages poured in from around the world. Not because of a forehand. Not because of a ranking number. But because of what the image symbolized. A Filipina athlete standing confidently on one of America's most prestigious editorial platforms. The scoreboard measures victories. Moments like these measure something else. And that brings us back to the photograph where this entire story began. Look at it again. The oversized shirt. The Madrid sunlight. The relaxed confidence. The historic masthead above her name. At first glance, it appears to be a fashion portrait. But now we know it was much more than that. It was a snapshot captured during a narrow window of time when belief arrived before proof. A moment when editors saw a future before most fans could. A moment when a young player was asked to carry expectations she had not yet earned. And then spent the next 10 months earning them. Not perfectly. Not without setbacks. Not without losses. But steadily. Relentlessly. Convincingly. Today, the story remains unfinished. The trophies are still being chased. The rankings are still climbing. Wimbledon waits on the horizon. New challenges are coming. Harder opponents are coming. Bigger stages are coming. Which is exactly why this cover matters. Because it wasn't built to celebrate the ending. It was designed to capture the beginning. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Nearly 180 years of history. Countless covers. Generations of influential names. Yet one of the most fascinating decisions that publication ever made may have been choosing a young Filipina tennis player before the world fully understood who she was becoming. Back then, it looked like a gamble. Months later, it looked like foresight. And if Alex Eala's journey continues the way many believe it will, future fans may eventually look back at that photograph and realize something remarkable. The breakthrough wasn't the story. The prediction was. Because long before the trophies arrived, long before the rankings surged, and long before the spotlight became impossible to ignore, someone looked at Alex Eala and quietly made a bet on the future. And so far, the future has been proving them right.